back to another 4547 Blog Presents the New Conservative Radio Show. I'm your host, Ninj, and there's a moment in every confrontation, personal, political, global, when warnings stop being theoretical and reality shows up to collect. That moment is called finding out. It's the FO in the famous FAFO. For years, the world's elites convinced themselves that consequences were optional, that power could be talked away, that strength was outdated, that rules mattered more than results. They mocked warnings, they laughed at red lines, they treated accountability like a suggestion. And then reality intervened. What you're seeing now, what this episode is about, is not chaos, it's correction. It's the moment when bluff meets gravity, when gravity wins. The moment when people who spent decades explaining why nothing could be done suddenly realized something was done, and they weren't in control of it. This isn't about tone, it's not about decorum, it's definitely not about feelings. It's about cause and effect, warning and consequence, action and outcome. Whether they admit it or not, leaders, institutions, regimes around the world understand exactly what this means because they've seen it before. Under Donald Trump, warnings weren't PR statements. They were deadlines. And missing the deadline has a cost. The media wants you distracted by language, by style, by personality. Anything except the uncomfortable truth staring them in the face. Strength doesn't need consensus. And reality doesn't ask permission. This episode is about that truth, about why so many people are shocked by consequences they were explicitly warned about how finding out became the great equalizer in a world addicted to excuses. Let's go ahead and jump right into it.
His last election win was as legit as Ilhan Omar's marriage license. This tyrant turned a country sitting on a lake of oil into a toxic landfill and then dared the rest of the world to complain. And it's funny how you only hear international law when America does something, but not when your lawless neighbor is throwing poisonous drugs and violent people over your fence. What an asset having a president who does what he says he'll do. No BS red lines, no diplomacy based on don't, which was Kamala's warning to Iran, and also to the bartender who tried to cut her off at Applebee's. Maduro's extraction sends a message to Venezuela, but also to Colombia, Mexico, Iran, and China. The message, you F around, Trump will give a masterclass in finding out. Remember TACO, the Democrats' acronym that stood for Trump always chickens out? Well, ask Khamenei and Maduro. Trump hit them with so many tomahawks, Liz Warren slammed the flap on her teeth.
Look, finding out is what happens after arrogance meets reality. It's what happens when warnings are ignored because they came from the wrong person. It's what happens when you fuck around. And let's be honest, for years, the so-called experts, diplomats, academics, and journalists laughed off Donald Trump. They said he was reckless. They said he didn't understand global norms. They said he didn't speak presidentially. What they really meant was he wouldn't play their game. Trump warns you first. He gives you a chance to adjust. He tells you where the line is, and when the line is crossed, he doesn't write a memo, he doesn't convene with a panel, he doesn't cry on cable news. He lets you find out. Fuck around, find out. That's the part the mainstream media can't stand because it exposes the scam that says words matter more than outcomes, the scam that says process is more important than results, the scam that lets weak people stay in charge forever because no one is ever held accountable. The media wants you to focus on tone instead of focusing on cause and effect. You were warned, you ignored it. Now you're surprised there are consequences. That's not chaos, that's order. That's why foreign leaders pay attention, even when they pretend not to. That's why institutions resist him, because he makes their excuses obsolete. That's why the phrase finding out hits so hard. It strips away ideology and leaves nothing but results. This isn't about personality, it's about gravity. Ignore it long enough, and it will introduce itself to you personally.
And he's killed millions of people. He's tortured. They have a torture chamber in the middle of Caracas that they were closing up. But he's tortured people.
President Trump there this morning after the arrest over the weekend of Nicolás Maduro in Venezuela. The president is now warning the leaders of Colombia, Mexico, Cuba. And a new opinion piece highlights the geopolitical importance of this moment. Quote, by ousting Maduro, Trump has begun to liberate the country while striking at the heart of the axis between Russia, China, and Iran, and providing more democracy, oil, and security to our friends in the Western Hemisphere, end of quote. One of the president's next targets may be Colombian President Gustavo Petro. Trump has said it also involves the cocaine trade there. Petro responded that he would take up arms if the U.S. attacks his country and told the president directly, "Come and get me, I'm waiting." Now remember, those are the last words of Nicolás Maduro in the back of that car right before they took him. Jackie Heinrich at the White House. Jackie.
The arrest of Nicolás Maduro isn't being treated as what it actually is. It's the removal of a criminal strongman who ran a narco state while the so-called international community looked the other way for years because of their oil. This is a decisive act of power taken after decades of weakness, excuses, and diplomatic theater that achieved absolutely nothing. Under Donald Trump, the approach isn't manage the problem forever, it's end it. And us voters, we love it. And that's exactly why the media hates it. Mainstream outlets want this framed as reckless, dangerous, unprecedented. But let's be honest, unprecedented compared to what? Years of sanctions that never toppled Maduro? Strongly worded statements while Venezuela collapsed into pretty much criminal chaos, endless negotiations that only brought time for corruption. Venezuela was heading in the wrong direction. Meanwhile, Colombia's President Gustavo Petro has gone full theater mode. He's not just criticizing Trump's move, he's threatening to take up arms and even daring President Trump to come after him. What a fool! Maduro was a tyrant, a narco-state operator, and a destabilizing force right on Colombia's border. Rather than rallying for long-term stability and coordinated pressure, Petro chooses partisanship and bravado. He'll talk about sovereignty, but his rhetoric demanding resistance and promising retaliation is a textbook recipe for escalating tensions with the United States, not resolving it. Trump essentially floated further operations, even suggesting a similar operation, saying, "Sounds good to me," when it comes to Colombia. So Petro better watch his ass. That's global politics in 2026. Trump says, we'll act to fix problems that have been festering for decades, and the bad actors of the world say, "Come and get me." It's not just insulting, it's dangerous for them and for us. Because while the Venezuelan crisis is already a nightmare for Colombian security and economy, Petro is walking a tightrope between defending sovereignty and inviting confrontation. Threatening to pick up arms in response to foreign policy disagreements isn't leadership. It's theatrical bullshit with real-world consequences. Colombia stands no chance militarily against the United States, and everybody knows it.
Nothing Donald Trump does should surprise you by now. It's like being shocked every time I seduce your mom. But Trump is a man of action, and when the action has a big upside and minimal risk, he takes it. He doesn't hold a seminar. He doesn't ask Europe how they feel about it. He just does it. And on Saturday, he did it. Now, are there good reasons to capture Maduro? Sure, drugs. But there's so much more. Venezuela sucks as a neighbor. It's like living next to a crack den, where the problem isn't just the crack, it's the lowlifes it attracts. Venezuela didn't just become a mess that plunged its citizens into a nightmare of hunger, violence, and corruption. It became a summer camp for the worst anti-American forces. Every thug, terrorist, international operative that hates our guts. Tren de Aragua, Hezbollah, Chinese agents. The country was full of more bad hombres than a P. Diddy freak-off on Cinco de Mayo. Yeah, that's bad. And Maduro wasn't even Venezuela's guy. His last election win was as legit as Ilhan Omar's marriage license. This tyrant turned a country sitting on a lake of oil into a toxic landfill and then dared the rest of the world to complain. And it's funny how you only hear international law when America does something, but not when your lawless neighbor is throwing poisonous drugs and violent people over your fence. What an asset having a president who does what he says he'll do.
Maduro's arrest didn't just take down a dictator, it ripped the cover off of a network that never should have been tolerated in the first place. This wasn't just a failed socialist experiment. Venezuela under Nicolás Maduro became a safe harbor for some of the worst actors on the global stage. U.S. officials have long warned about ties between Caracas and Hezbollah, finance terror, money laundering, travel documents, protection. They're all not rumors. It's infrastructure in Venezuela. At the same time, China wasn't just doing business. Beijing was embedding itself. Loans, oil deals, leverage, locking in influence, while Venezuela collapsed and criminals filled the vacuum. When Maduro went down, China didn't mourn democracy. It protested the loss of its client. That's the part people need to understand. This arrest wasn't about one man. It was about dismantling a hub where narco-terrorist cartels, foreign militants, and rival powers all intersected right in the Western Hemisphere, right here, close to home. So when critics call this destabilizing, ask yourself what they're defending. Because what was propped up in Venezuela wasn't stability, it was protection, racket for bad actors. Maduro's arrest didn't create chaos, it exposed it, and the people in Venezuela couldn't be happier.
Nothing Donald Trump does should surprise you by now. It's like being shocked every time I seduce your mom. But Trump is a man of action, and when the action has a big upside and minimal risk, he takes it. He doesn't hold a seminar. He doesn't ask Europe how they feel about it. He just does it. And on Saturday, he did it. Now, are there good reasons to capture Maduro? Sure, drugs. But there's so much more. Venezuela sucks as a neighbor. It's like living next to a crack den, where the problem isn't just the crack, it's the lowlifes it attracts. Venezuela didn't just become a mess that plunged its citizens into a nightmare of hunger, violence, and corruption. It became a summer camp for the worst anti-American forces, every thug, terrorist, international operative that hates our guts. Tren de Aragua, Hezbollah, Chinese agents. The country was full of more bad hombres than a P. Diddy freak-off on Cinco de Mayo. Yeah, that's bad. And Maduro wasn't even Venezuela's guy. His last election win was as legit as Ilhan Omar's marriage license. This tyrant turned a country sitting on a lake of oil into a toxic landfill and then dared the rest of the world to complain. And it's funny how you only hear international law when America does something, but not when your lawless neighbor is throwing poisonous drugs and violent people over your fence. What an asset having a president who does what he says he'll do.
Let's talk about the dumbest political meme the media ever convinced itself was wisdom or was funny. That taco. Trump always chickens out. It was cute. It was smug, like the liberals are. It made people who never leave the green room or who never leave their basement feel very smart and empowered. They said it every time Trump warned someone about something. They said it every time the markets twitched. They said it every time he gave a deadline instead of an apology. Relax, they told each other. He won't do anything. And that acronym aged like milk. Because here's the truth. They never wanted to admit Trump didn't chicken out. He let people expose themselves first. He was patient. He warned. He waited. He let arrogance build. Just like they do, they became arrogant. And then when the line was crossed, he acted. And nothing nuked the taco fantasy faster than this Maduro situation. You don't chicken out when you take a sitting foreign leader off the board. You don't chicken out when you dismantle a narco-state hub tied to cartels, terrorists, and rival powers. You don't chicken out when the entire globe press corps has to rewrite their talking points overnight. Taco worked as a Wall Street joke because it assumed Trump was bluffing. Maduro proved he wasn't. What actually happened was this. The media mistook restraint for weakness and patience for fear. They thought because Trump didn't act on their timeline, he wouldn't act at all. That was their mistake, and Maduro paid for it. And notice how quiet the acronym crowd is now.
Now our enemies recognize the pattern, blowing up ships, capturing warlords, taking out nuclear facilities. Trump is living in a Michael Bay movie, where in every third scene, he's walking away from an explosion. And it creates changes in behavior. Who knows, maybe Maduro asked to be captured instead of getting turned into New Year's Eve confetti. He certainly couldn't leave on one of those Coke boats, which have been blowing up like a plus-size model's ass around the holidays. And in case you're asking, why didn't Trump do Mexico first? They are, after all, the main source of fentanyl. Sure, but that's not how you do things. You start with the easy part first, and then you work your way up, sending a message along the way. Also, those fentanyl precursors were sourced from China. And where were senior Chinese diplomats hours before Maduro was captured? Caracas. It's where they provide loans and support in exchange for oil. 2 birds, 1 stone. But as Trump gets more done in foreign policy than anyone, domestically he's stuck fighting a swamp of corruption. It's a good comparison to the Democrats' skill set versus the Trump mindset. With Trump, you got America first. Democrats, they never believed America should be first in anything except self-hate. So they hide their fraud inside complexity, government programs, posturing legislation, foreign policy jargon, international law. Meanwhile, they're just too virtuous to ensure the safety of Americans. But the funniest part? What Trump is doing now ends up helping those morons too. If energy prices keep dropping, crime keeps falling, drug traffickers and illegals keep leaving, suddenly the commie mayors across the country have easier jobs to ignore. That's the Trump effect. He makes America safer, even for corrupt, retarded douchebags.
China's reaction to Maduro being removed wasn't outrage, it was panic. Beijing screamed about being sovereign because it just lost an asset. Venezuela wasn't a partner, it was leverage, oil, access, influence, until the plug got pulled. That's how regimes operate. No loyalty, no principles, just transactions. Everything's a transaction. And let's stop pretending China was alone. The Venezuelan regime sat at the crossroads of China, Iran, Hezbollah, money ideology, Russia, terror networks, all overlapping right here in the Western Hemisphere. Maduro wasn't a leader. He was a node. And when that node disappeared, the network cracked. That's not diplomacy falling apart. That's a cartel losing territory. China didn't lose an ally. China lost an asset. When Maduro went down, the Iran-Hezbollah-China pipeline cracked. That's not diplomacy failing. That's the cartel that they have getting exposed. The Iran-Hezbollah-China cartel. That's all I got for you guys today. Thank you for joining me. Stop by 4547blog.com and get you the 4547 Blogazine Volume 2 or some conservative apparel. We'd love to have you back. Can't wait till next time.